Yo, what's up? My name is Lexlight, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you every character's best stance. Okay, so because Bovar is a very base legend, he has all base stats, so I just recommend going for strength, and that way just get rid of Dex, that way you can have extra strength. There's nothing Dex is going to give you on this legend, so you might as well just take the extra strength. On Castity, however, if you have 9 Dex Castity, on Hammer, you can do Sarah, D-Light, into GC Inlight True at White. However, I still recommend just going for defense because you don't really want to be a glass cannon, and that combo isn't really as important. It's not really, like, you're never really going to go for Sarah, D-Light, and, like, that often, so you might as well just get the extra defense. On Orion, I used to say go base, and that was because on Spear you can do Sarah to Inlight True, but now you can do Sarah to Inlight True no matter what dex you're on, so you might as well just go defense, get rid of the extra dex. It's not going to give you anything if you have more dex on this legend, so just go for defense. However, on Lord Vraxx, if you have 9 dex Lord Vraxx, what you can do on Lances, you can do D-Light into Inlight True, which is a pretty good combo, so I recommend going for 9 dex on Vraxx. It gets rid of speed, so, you know, you have the kind of base speed, but then you also get D-Light into Inlight True, which is a pretty good combo, and I definitely recommend going for 9 dex on Vraxx. On Gnash, you can just go for defense, because 4-3 dex doesn't matter, it doesn't give you anything extra. However, if you really want dex for whatever reason, you can just go base. It works pretty well, but I definitely recommend just going defense. Getting used to 2 dex is pretty good. And then also, you know, you just have more of a tanky legend. On Queen Nai, speed is actually really important on Queen Nai because if you have no speed, then you're just never getting back to stage because of how slow she moves. So I think 4 speed overall is just really good, and you don't need that much defense, so you can go for that. However, if you want to be a maniac and you want to play at 3 speed, you can just go for strength stance, which gets rid of dex, but I definitely recommend going speed stance just so you have ability to recover the stage without dying really early. As for Hattori, you can either go speed stance. However, if you're playing 2s with her, I just recommend going defense and getting rid of speed. You don't need 9 speed, and especially in 2s you don't need 9 speed, so going for defense kind of gives you that more base stat line, so now you're less of a glass cannon and you're going to survive a lot more attacks. As for Sir Roland, he's also kind of a mix and match. You can either go speed stance, which I personally like because I like to have my lance sledges at least 5 speed. However, you can go into defense stance if you just want a big tanky build, and in 2s I definitely recommend probably going for defense. It gets rid of dex, you don't really need dex, but speed is also really good, so kind of up to you. If you really want 5 speed, then definitely go for speed, but if you want extra defense, then go for defense. And the same thing kind of applies to Scarlet. So you either want speed, you get rid of extra strength, but you get 5 speed, so you get the base speed, or you can go defense and then have extra defense, but then have 4 speed and then lose dex, which doesn't matter. So either you want speed or you want defense. Lord Vraxx, just go strength, you get a ton of strength, you get rid of dex, you don't really need dex, so might as well just get the extra strength. On Ada, you want to go for defense, just get rid of the dex. Once again, there's nothing that dex is going to do on this legend, so you might as well just try to be less of a glass cannon. On Sentinel, just go for strength. Once again, dex does not apply here. 5-4 dex does not matter, so just go strength. And then on Lucian, you want to go for the extra defense. Once again, dex just doesn't matter, so extra defense, especially with the extra defense, is going to make up for the less strength you have. Okay, so moving on to the second row, we have Teros. You don't need dex, so just go for speed. On Brynn, you want to go for strength. Once again, you just don't need dex on these weapons. As for Asuri, go strength. You kind of see a trend with most of the time you just get rid of dex. On Brawlhalla, you just get rid of dex. On Ember, you want the extra speed, so you can get rid of dex. Or if you want extra defense, you can get rid of speed, so you can be less of a glass cannon. I kind of like both, so it's kind of your opinion. I probably would go for the defense, just so then you can have a little bit less of a glass cannon feel. Over that, Ace off, you just want the extra defense, so get rid of dex. Or, I guess technically you can get the extra speed if you really want speed on Axe, in which case you'll get rid of strength. However, I just prefer defense. I don't really mind with the 4 speed on Axe. On Koji, just get rid of dex. You do not need that much dex, right? So just get defense. On Macho Man, Ulgrim, right? You can kind of choose a lot of different stances. I've seen people who go speed stance and just get rid of the extra dex, which is pretty good. I personally just like the extra strength because, like I said before, I only really need 5 speed for Lance. That's just what I'm fine with, so I like the extra strength so I can maybe kill earlier. Some people go defense in 2s. I don't really understand why. It's just not that great because it gets rid of strength, so I really wouldn't recommend defense. And some people just do 4 dex because they struggle with some true combos on Axe. I don't really recommend this one, so I would probably choose between speed and strength, just whatever you value more. Do you want more speed on your legend and get this more well-rounded stat line where everything's kind of even? Or do you want the extra strength so you can kill earlier in certain situations? As for Diana, you want to go for speed, just get rid of Dex, you don't need it. On Jhala, obviously go for the extra defense, that way you're not much of a glass cannon, you don't need Dex. On Core, I just recommend going for strength, just get rid of the extra Dex. Some people probably do play speed, but I don't really like how it gets rid of defense. It's just, if it got rid of Dex, this would be a really good stat, but personally, I just like to go for strength. However, if you do want the 5 speed, I guess I can understand, so you can go 5 speed if you want the extra speed, but I think strength overall is just a better stat. On Ulsang, it's pretty obvious, just go for strength. And then on Stevonn, I can recommend going for defense. I really wouldn't go into strength. I know it gets rid of speed, but I don't know, it's just not too great of a stat line in my opinion. I don't think it matters too much, but if you really want the extra strength, I guess it's fine because it does balance everything out. However, I just prefer defense more, especially because Dex is just not as useful, and I like to have fast legends sometimes, so if I can have a fast legend and I can still get like a defense or strength out of it, then I think it's worth it. So definitely go defense, but if you want to go strength, that's fine too. Okay, so moving on to the third row now, we have Ragnir, which I recommend going for defense, just to get rid of Dex, you don't need it. On Cross, you should go for speed, because once again, you don't need Dex. On Mirage, you can go strength. I really recommend going for defense, as I don't really like getting rid of strength for defense, and I don't like getting rid of defense for strength. So if you really want the base stance, you can go for it, but I just recommend going for the extra strength. You don't need Dex, so you might as well just take the extra strength for it. As for Nyx, you can go speed stance. Pretty self-explanatory, you don't need Dex. Bases everything out, you just get extra speed. If you really want strength to even it all out, you can go for it, but once again, don't really like getting rid of strength for defense, so I would just go for speed, get the extra free stat. On Mordex, just go strength. There's not really a question here, you just want strength, you don't need the extra Dex, so just go strength. On Yumiko, you just want the extra strength, and it kind of bases everything out. On Artemis, you can either go for extra speed, or you can go for extra defense and get rid of speed. I personally just like to have extra speed. I don't really know why, I just think it's fun to have 9 speed on her. But you can go for the extra defense and get rid of speed, kind of bases everything out. I probably would recommend this more for people, because I don't really think a lot of people need 9 speed. And especially if you're playing 2s with her, you definitely want to go for defense. So probably defense. If you want the 9 speed for fun, you can go for it. It's kind of up to you. On Caspian, I just recommend going for speed because defense takes off of strength, so not really a stat I like to go for if it's going to get rid of strength, so I would just go for defense. If you really want strength though, you can go for strength and get rid of the extra speed, which in case you'll have, 5 speed, which is pretty good. But I'll just take the 6 speed, get rid of the Dex, you don't really need it. As for Sidra, once again, same situation, just go for the extra defense, because you don't need Dex. On Zol, you can go for just 10 strength Zol if you just want 10 strength Zol, but obviously it gets rid of defense, so I really wouldn't recommend it. As for speed, you get rid of strength, so if you want the extra speed to have 5 speed, then definitely go for speed. But I personally just like to go for defense, just to have less of the glass cannon build. It's really good in 2s, and you don't need the extra Dex, so I just recommend going for defense. As for Kaya, just go for strength, you don't need the extra Dex. Isaiah, just get rid of strength, get the extra Dex. I guess technically you can go for speed if you really want 5 speed, but you do get rid of strength, which is kind of your weaker stat, so I just think strength is better. As for Jiro, this is kind of an interesting one because you can go for speed, or sorry, you can't go for speed, but you can go for strength and get rid of Dex, or you can go for the extra defense and get rid of attack, which I don't really like, so I'd probably just go for strength, get rid of the Dex. You can go for speed if you want to play 2 defense, but obviously that's not recommended, so I'd definitely go strength. However, if you decide to go for base stance, you can do Nair into Sair True. So like if you hit a Nair, you can do Jump Sair True, but this only works at 7 Dex on Scythe, so kind of up to you. I think overall I would rather just go for strength, because usually if I'm going for Nair into Sair, they don't have a dodge, and that's 1 frame, so I just think strength is better, and especially to make up for the glass cannon build, because you can't really go defense without getting rid of strength, so I just think strength is better. Okay, so moving on to the 4th row now, we're almost done, right? On Lin Fei, you want to go for strength. I used to say to go for 9 Dex because it used to give you a lot on guitars. Now it doesn't really do much. I don't even think there's a single 9 Dex combo. I know there's some stuff for like 5 or 6 Dex where you can do like Nair to Inlight, but it's not really that useful. So just go for the extra strength and kind of try to base everything out, because she is that kind of glass cannon build, so you might as well take the extra strength. On Zariel, you can go for defense. I know some people like to go for speed just to have the extra speed, and some people want to go for strength for some reason. I don't really know, but I think either speed or defense is the best. You can go base, I guess, but I think speed probably is going to be the more picked one, or defense is definitely going to be an option, especially if you're going to play 2s, so I recommend going for defense. On Rayman, you should just go for the extra speed, a lot of extra speed. You can get rid of speed for defense if you're playing 2s, but I definitely think speed's the best stance. You don't need dex, so just get the free stat. If you're going to play Dusk, just go for strength, just get rid of the extra dex, right? You don't need it. On Fait, you can either go for the extra speed, or you can go for some extra strength and get rid of speed, kind of to match out her glass cannon build. I think speed's just better. I really like playing her on like a fast legend where I'm almost at that 9 dex, not 9 dex, but 9 speed. I just prefer the faster legend, so you can go for that. Strength is definitely an option though, so kind of just pick whatever one you like more. On Thor, just go for speed. You just get a bunch of extra speed. You don't need dex. On Petra, same thing, just go for the extra speed. If you want, you can go for defense and get rid of speed, and that way you have 5 speed, and then you have 5 defense, but kind of up to you. I personally just play speed, just get rid of the dex, but I can definitely see people picking defense, especially if you're going to be playing 2s with. As for Vector, just go strength. You don't need the extra dex for anything, so pretty obvious stat. It just kind of bases everything out. Everything's a really good stat line here, so definitely go for strength. As for Volkov, you do not need that much dex unless... there actually is nothing this much dex does, because you already have 7 dex, so you already have Nair True, so just go for the extra strength. If you really want to go speed, it gets rid of strength, and I don't really like how it gets rid of the lower stat, so I just think strength overall is better. Just get used to 5 speed. It's not as bad on Scythe, so don't have to worry too much. While 5 speed may be better, I think strength overall is going to be better for this specific legend, because you don't need 8 dex. I mean, that's simple. You just don't need 8 dex. On Onyx, obviously just go for speed, get the extra speed. You do not need dex on this legend. As for Jaeyun, same thing, just go for strength. You don't need dex. On Mako, you can go for extra speed, and you have 9 speed, and you're getting rid of dex, so if you want the fast legend. However, you can go into defense and then get rid of speed, especially if you're going to be playing 2s with her. Alright, both of these stats are pretty good. I just recommend picking whatever one you want more. As for Madgar, just go strength. There's not really too much of a different option. I know some Great Sword players actually prefer speed, but I don't really like how it takes away from strength, because a lot of Great Sword players, they really want to have 5 speed, or at least like 4 speed. But I think strength overall is just going to be the best stat. You don't need dex on any of these weapons, and then you're just getting to this more tanky build, so definitely go for strength there. Okay, so moving on to the final row, we have Reno, which obviously you just want to go for strength, base everything out, and then you get rid of dex. As for Munin, you can either go for speed, or you can go for defense and get rid of speed. That way you have more of the 5 defense. I really like both of these. I think maybe I'm leaning more to defense for this legend, but definitely you can go for speed. I just think defense overall is better. You don't really need the extra speed because of just how much speed she has already, and then you're already getting to this like very, even out stat line, so I definitely recommend going for defense for that one. As for Arcadia, it kind of depends. Once again, if you really want speed, you can go for speed and then you have 5 speed, but especially if you're going to be playing 2s, then just go for defense. I think most people are going to pick defense for Arcadia, but like I said, I know some Great Sword players really like 5 speed, so kind of up to you. If you're going to be playing Ezio, then you want to go for defense, right? You don't worry, you want that Glass Cannon build, evens out everything, you don't need the extra dex. As for Teska, you want to go for strength, get rid of the extra dex. As for Thea, she's kind of this Glass Cannon build, so definitely go for strength to get rid of the extra dex. If you want to, right, you can just max out speed and then have a 2 defense legend for some fun. But yeah, definitely go for strength. It's the one that makes the most sense. It's the only one that makes the most sense. All these other kind of stats just make no sense. Like, you don't need extra dex. Don't really want to go to defense unless you're trying to troll. And defense just gets rid of strength. So just go for the extra strength, get rid of dex. Alright, that's a pretty obvious one. As for Red Raptor, I recommend going for strength. Just get rid of the extra dex. And that way, the Glass Cannon build kind of evens out. As for Loki, you notice that he has a lot of dex. But once again, you only need 7 dex on side for Nair and True, so you can just go strength and get rid of the extra dex. You don't need it. As for 7, kind of the same thing. You have speed, right? Which I think is just overall the best stat. So definitely just get speed. You don't need the extra dex. And then you have a very tanky build with 5 speed. That's a really good stat line. As for Vivi, you can go into defense if you're playing 2s and get rid of the extra speed. Or you can go into strength and get rid of the extra dex. I personally like strength more just because I don't really need dex on this legend, and then I get the extra speed. While I get a little bit less defense, it makes up for it in the amount of strength I get. Now, Imugi. Yeah, this one's a kind of 1 or 2 option. Great Sword players, like I said, they like to have speed on greatswords. So if you want 4 speed, you need to go for speed. You don't need that much defense, so you can get rid of defense. However, if you're playing 2s, I probably recommend just going for base or going for strength if you really want 3 decks, right? If you want 3 decks, then go for base. But I don't really see decks being too much of an important factor. I know just some people who play Axe struggle with the combos, and so they like having 3 to 4 decks for the combos. I know it makes it a lot easier, but I think overall the combos do pretty consistent if you do 2 decks. Like, I never had struggles hitting it on 2 decks, so I think overall just practice more with that combo and then just get the extra strength, especially if you're going to be playing 2s. This is a very beast of a legend, right? But obviously I can definitely see the argument for wanting speed, so going for speed if you want it, or just go for strength if you're fine with a 3 speed greatsword. Oh my god, it's Brawlhalla. Oh my god, it's Brawlhalla. Oh my god. So for King Zuvia, guess what? You want to run speed because it gets rid of decks. I know. That's a crazy idea to get rid of decks, but you want to run speed.